So, you could probably look this up, but this all started back in, I guess, it was like 86. These posters had been up for a year, or posters like them, all made by the same chicks. I assumed that they were chicks. They always wore gorilla masks, so who the fuck knew, right? But it's like a decade ago, back at like 86 or so. And I'm walking down Broadway in Soho with my brother and his kid. Just a young kid, a little rugrat. He's like 4 or maybe 7. I don't know, I can't tell the difference. But he was learning how to read then. He's memorized all of the basics up and down the street, like no parking, street cleaning. This kid was ready to park a fucking car in Manhattan. We stop outside my gallery. Me and Mike Sr., my brother, we're talking about whatever, not paying attention to Michael Jr. He's standing between us, gawking up at some flyer on the lamppost. And all of a sudden, he says, "Uncle Patrick, why don't you like girls?" I stop pretending to listen to whatever my brother's saying. I ask the kid, "What are you talking about, Mikey?" He says, "Why don't you like girls?" I turn to my brother and he's grinning at me. He says, "Oh, I think Patrick likes girls." And the kid's still looking up. He says, "But the sign," and he points at it. "It says you don't let women into your gallery." We all looked up at this poster. The Gorilla Girls had done another tally. Now, I'd seen one of these things before. They'd counted up how many women some of the big museums had shown in solo shows the year before. Yeah, pretty much 0. Now they went after gallerists like me. They'd counted up how many women we'd recently shown. Marion Goodman showed 0 women in 85 and 1 in 86. Mary Boone had goose eggs both years. Leo dropped from 4 to 3. Marlboro dropped from 2 to 1. There were 18 galleries named on this thing, and most of them only showed 1 or no women. And that included me. At least my nephew knew how to spell our last name. The Patrick Bowman Gallery. 0 chicks in 85, and another 0 in 86. The kid says zeros in both lines, 0, 0. They put a comment next to your name. It says, "Unforgive." Yeah, kid, I can read, thanks. My brother grins like the smug Wall Street prick he is and says, "Not very 80s of you." I tell him, "Oh, whatever, Mike. How many women work in your office who aren't secretaries?" He thinks for a good long while and finally says, I think there's a lady in the mailroom." I wouldn't think about this shit again, but the kid goes and tells his mom, my sister-in-law Clarice, and she relishes bringing that shit up. The kid starts calling me Uncle Zeros. He does this in public. We'd meet up at a restaurant where there are other people in the business, and this kid's yelling, "Hi, Uncle Zeros." I look at Mike and Clarice, and those jerks are laughing at it. I think they told him to do it. God, keep your kid under control, guys. Come on. I have to explain to people why this kid is calling me Uncle Zeros. It's embarrassing. Not that I did anything about it. I wasn't looking for any new artists. I can usually take on maybe 1 new artist every year. That's all I have time or room for. So it's not like I'd all of a sudden have this giant stable of lady artists. But a couple years later, in 89, I saw this new poster that the Gorilla Girls put up. Thank God it didn't name me again, because that kid could read like a Rhodes Scholar by then. It did give me an idea, though. In big, bold letters across the top, it said, "When racism and sexism are no longer fashionable, what will your art collection be worth?" Jesus Christ, right? What? A Jasper Johns had recently sold for $18 million at auction, and this poster contended that you could buy works from 67 different women, one from each of them, for the same price as the Johns. And there were famous names on that list, even for back then, like Georgia O'Keeffe, Frida Kahlo, Mary Cassatt, Ava Hesse, just goes on and on and on. And supposedly, at least in '89, you could buy a work by each of them for the same price as one Jasper Johns. So I started thinking maybe there's an untapped market here. Collectors love a good deal. They want to feel like they're getting in on something before anyone else. It makes them feel smart, not just financially, but intellectually. Most of these guys make wads of dough doing the most boring fucking shit in the world. They want art to make them not so boring to the imported models they're banging at the Roxy. So I ripped down the poster and realized that I had something new for a sales pitch. But I still didn't have any women on my list. I'm not a secondary market guy, no, so I didn't want to go looking for the women who were already on that list. How many of them were even alive still? So I had one of my gallery girls go through all the slides that had been dropped off in the past 2 years. I told her to pull out all the women. I never look through these things, man or woman. I'm very equal opportunity when it comes to schlubs dropping off slides. There's no opportunity there. But for the first time since I started out, I fired up the light table, dusted off the loop, and I scanned through these damn things one at a time. I hate looking at slides. I much rather have my people tell me what's good, and then if they can convince me that they're actually excited about it, and they're not just fucking the guy, then I'll have my assistant go check it out. And then if she actually thinks it's worth my time away from everything else I gotta do at the gallery, then I'll go look at it. Sitting down with thousands of slides at a light table is fucking murder. I sat down, I placed the hand lens on the first slide at the top left corner, and I went one by one across the table, row after row, sheet after sheet. My eyes bled after a box of these things. I couldn't tell one painting from the next after a couple of sheets. After a while, I realized that I only paid attention to bright colors because nothing else stood out. That's not a way to decide what to go look at in person. I actually thought that this would be fun, bring me back to my salad days. Well, fuck my salad days. I was about to give up after my headache got worse for the 15th time after squinting into the hand lens for hours. But then, I actually found something that I recognized. Images from a show I'd seen at Daryl Stanton's a year earlier. A little gal you might know named Celia Merode. I don't know if I liked them because I'd actually seen them before, there was that familiarity, or if I really thought that they'd be worth checking out again. I was into them when I saw them at Stanton's. The nudes reminded me of what the feminists were doing in the 70s, like Schneemann, Wilkie, but they had this raw new power, maybe something like Kiki Smith, who I'd been seeing recently at Fawbush. Basically, they were the right amount of old and new. Because a collector doesn't want something that's too new. That's dangerous. Who knows if that'll ever pay off? But if you can convince the collector that this is the next direction that art is taking, then you have them pinched by the taint. However, I hadn't had this happen to me in more than a decade. Your Miss Celia Merode wouldn't take my calls. First, I had my assistant Kelly call her. She left messages. I heard one of these messages. It wasn't like Kelly didn't drop my name or gush over how much I'd like to see her work. Celia just didn't call back. I had Kelly go down to Stanton's place a few blocks away, and that pile of dog puke had the gall to berate Kelly just for mentioning Celia's name. So Kelly calls Celia's apartment one more time, and she gets her roommate on the phone. Apparently, Celia works 3 jobs. She's never home. I say, call back that roommate. Ask if any of those jobs are making art. She calls the roommate back, and no, none of the jobs are making art. Ask her if she's repped by anybody. No, she isn't repped by anybody. Ask her if Celia wants to make art. Oh, yeah, she wants to make art. Then why the fuck isn't she calling me back? I don't like being dicked around, so I gave up. I didn't want to waste any more time on this. I couldn't care less. My list was already full anyway. It was just a fun little idea that I went way overboard on one week. Yes, Kelly. Yes, lucky for me, she cared.